You out in our church today after a good week that we've had. We just had a week of VBS, all 5 nights, and then Saturday, bounce houses and kids everywhere. It was a good week, and I just I don't see Robin yet, but thank you to Robin and all those. She led it, but there was a lot of adult volunteers. I could never begin to name them all that helped out with that week, and so I want to say thank you to all of you. It was a great week, and we're just so grateful to the Lord to have that opportunity. And as you've all heard on the news, Friday was a monumental day in the life of the church when Roe was turned backwards, and life in the womb is now safer than it has ever been in 50 years. And if you were one of those who prayed, who had a passion for that, bless you, thank you. That prayer has been answered. And so we praise the Lord for that as well. Just a couple announcements here before we go on. It's a Mission Sunday here this morning. A couple announcements in the bulletin real quickly. Baby bottles are due back. If you did not fully get that back yet, bring them in as soon as possible, and we'll get them back to my brother's keeper. There's a women's Bible study tonight here at 7 o'clock. Remind all the women of that. Field announcements coming up. The next Sunday PM service in the gym is going to be on the 10th. And then there's a number of other small announcements you can look at in the bulletin. Robin, did you want to make any announcements this morning about VBS or not? You want to wait till next week? Okay. Yeah, next week we're going to be showing about a quick slide presentation of pictures, and we'll give some details of what took place during VBS. So that we'll do that next Sunday morning. So, any announcements you have from the audience today? Anything we're missing here? Been a lot of activity this past week. A lot of things happened. Continue to pray for several people. Continue to pray for Scott Bullock. He is currently, if you got the message this morning, prayer chain. He is in the Chambersburg Hospital. It is an intestinal blockage he was dealing with. I was in severe pain. He's still good this morning, I guess, doing okay. So, to Monday. Okay, I'll keep him to Monday. Yes, Kevin.
Tuesday night, I'm planning on going there with the Roxbury camp and splitting firewood.
Okay. For the camp there? Yeah, okay. Tuesday night at the camp, splitting firewood. You have a time?
Let's shoot for 5.
5 o'clock. Tuesday night, 5 o'clock at the camp, splitting firewood. Okay.
Nobody shows up, it's fine. I'll be there.
All right. If you want to come, talk to Kevin. We'll be splitting firewood Tuesday night. Good, thank you. Always great opportunities to serve. Okay. I think that's all we have here. I'll continue to pray for Dorothy Pottinger. I haven't heard any updates. Anybody have an update on Dorothy recently? I know Daryl's not around today. Doing okay, I guess, with her heart rate.
I saw her. I don't know how she does up today, but I saw her at Menahaven and fed her and Dawn.
Okay.
So she was tired, but she looked well.
Okay. Thank you. And also, always, and continue to lift up Judy Robber. The cancer is taking its toll, and they're just taking a day at a time. Encourage them, send them a card, call them, visit them. It's always encouraging to get the supportive family around you when you're facing your last days of living. And so continue to support them as well. Okay, I think we're ready to begin our service. We'll begin with a word of prayer. We're going to do some singing, and then we will get into a Mission Sunday. Always remember in the back, on a Mission Sunday, there's a little basket back there on that stand, and you can give to our missionaries in their work. So I just let you know that before you, as you think about that, have time to prepare for that. That basket's in the back on the stand for mission work. Let's have a word of prayer and get our service started. Thank you, Father, again for a new day today. It is a day of worship, a day of rest, and we are grateful. You have overshadowed us in the past week through our VBS, through all different avenues of life, and we are just grateful for your support, for your protection, your provisions. And God, we just publicly again thank you that Thank you for the safety of the baby in the womb and the reversal of Roe v. Wade. And as a church, we applaud and we bless you for walking us in that direction. Now, God, as we turn our attention to our service this morning, we ask that you would come and be among us and be with our speakers this morning as well, as you would just overshadow them and bless them, that the message they have to give us about mission work would be clear and we'll be able to support them in any way we can. So we just give you this hour. It is yours to do with as you will. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, have our chorister come forward and let's do a little bit of singing.
Good morning. If you'll turn in your hymnals to number 718, and if you'd like to stand, please. 718. 718. Day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. Trusting in my Father's wise bestowment, I've no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly is part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he fain would bear and cheer me, he whose name is Counselor and Power. The protection of his child and treasure is a charge that on himself he laid. As your days, your strength shall be in measure. This the pledge to me he made. Help me then in every tribulation, so to trust your promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation, offered me within your holy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, ere to take as from a father's hand, one by one the days and moments fleeting, till I reach the promised land. Next we'll turn to 349. 349. Oh, how he loves you and me. Oh, how he loves you and me. He gave his life, what more could he give? Oh, how he loves you. Oh, how he loves me. Oh, how he loves you and me. Jesus to Calvary did go, his love for sinners to show. What he did there brought hope from despair. Oh, how he loves you. Oh, how he loves me. Oh, how he loves you and me. And lastly, 696. 696. In shady green pastures so rich and so sweet, God leads his dear children along, where the water
Thank you, Hannah and Vanita, for leading us in our singing this morning. Well, this morning is a Missions Sunday. I'm not going to do the introductions. I just want to give you a thought to think about. It's a thought I tell our church board. I've told them many times, I think. So, guys, you have to help me because I can't see the forest for the trees. When you're down in life, you're doing your job, doing your thing, you can't always see the perspective of the bigger world, the bigger picture. When you're really involved in something yourself. Missions work is something I believe is good for us always to hold in front of the church. The ability to see something greater than ourselves. Because God is at work here. God is at work in Africa. God is at work in every part of the world. And some days we need to stand up and look out and see the vastness of God. And what God is doing in other places to understand the forest and how it works. And that's why we do these Sunday mornings of mission work, to give us a glimpse of something greater. So I'm going to have Donna come. She's going to introduce our speakers as she serves on the missions committee and enjoy our mission service.
Good morning. Welcome to Mission Sunday. This morning we have the pleasure of having Tony and Veronica Beers, and they're coming to us from Zambia. So please give them your attention. Thank you.
So normally I teach in farm fields and things, so I'm not used to having all this technology with me, so bear with me till I get a thing set up for you here. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm sorry? Oh. Let me just check, see if things, okay, this thing's working. All right, sorry for that, guys. I asked for a mic stand because I talk with my hands, and I have a lot of toys. So we got the toys today. So I'm Tony Beers. I'm a missionary in Zambia. And I just want to first introduce my family a little bit. My daughters aren't here today. They're with their grandparents. But this is, oh, not the right button. That button. Okay. So this is my wife, Veronica, and my youngest daughter, Natasha. Natasha's 5. And this is our neighbor, Mrs. Matwitwa. So while we're introducing my family, I thought I'd introduce some of our friends with us, since most of our pictures are with our friends. This is my oldest daughter, Liliana, and my other daughter, Tishenga. Liliana Tishenga, and my other daughter, Chalala. Chalala's not really my daughter. Chalala's my daughter's best friend, but she eats dinner at my house like 3 days a week. She sleeps at my house usually 2 days a week, and pretty much wherever Liliana is, Chalala is also. This is Catherine. This is Chalala's cousin, who also lives with Chalala. And then this is me with my friends. This is my friend Catherine Hamatoe and my friend Albert in seminary. And these are 2 people that I do farming trainings with. So these are my coworkers and my friends. And so we live in Zambia, and I realize that nobody here's from Zambia, I don't think. Don't see anyone that looks, might be some white Zambians in here. Probably not. Okay, and maybe some people have been to Zambia, but I want to give you some context. So first I'm going to talk a little about Zambia. First, we are right here. This is Zambia, this little blue one. We're located in the southern part of Africa, and we're on a highland plateau, which means it's a little bit cold in Zambia. It's not a lot cold like Pennsylvania, but it's a little bit cold in Zambia. It can get down to 40 degrees at night in the wintertime. So we never have frost, but we do have some cold. And then, I'm sorry, guys. For a mechanical engineer, I'm pretty bad at using technology. And right here is the town of Choma. So this is the town where I live. Up here is Lusaka, the capital, where the government is and where a lot of the industry is. Down here is Livingstone, where, has anyone here heard of Victoria Falls? Our great waterfall. This is where a lot of the tourism is. This is where you can go see rhinos and elephants and things like that. But I live in Choma. Choma is a little agricultural town. Choma is the kind of place you'd go if your plow broke and you need a new plowshare. Choma is the kind of place where you go if you want to buy some fertilizer or some seeds. Not much going on in Choma that isn't farm related. If it's farm related, we're probably doing it. If it's not farm related, we're probably not doing it. So that's kind of Choma. And then a little bit about the climate, because we're going to talk a lot about farming. And so it helps if you're going to talk about farming if people know what you're up against. So we don't have a lot of rain in Zambia. So the rain prayerfully starts in November. We always say the rain should start November 15th. Last year it was December 15th. They can be late. They can be very late. And it'll rain prayerfully from November, probably December, until about April, May. And then it doesn't rain again for the entire rest of the year. We don't need a weatherman. If it's December, January, February, it may rain. And if it's July, you don't need a raincoat. Don't worry about it. It's not going to rain. Which means we can do rain-fed agriculture only about half the year. And the other half of the year, if you can irrigate, you can do vegetables, you can do things, but field crops pretty much aren't grown during that dry season. So that's kind of the situation we have. And we can't really waste any water in Zambia when it comes to farming. If you even plowing your field, when you turn that soil over and expose that undersoil to the sun, you're wasting a rain. One of those rains is going to evaporate off because you just exposed it to the air. So we have to be very careful in Zambia with our water. So that's just a little context. Also, from a church context, Zambia is I'm going to say I don't think there's such thing as a Christian nation. Nations aren't Christians, people are Christians. But it's a churched nation. And so the BIC Church in Zambia is quite successful. We're quite large. And so there's about 25,000 BIC church members in Zambia. So there's been a mission with the BIC Church in Zambia since 1906. But something that people don't understand is that everybody's surviving by farming, even our pastors. So the Bishop of Zambia, right, this is the Allen Robinson position of Zambia. He's like the national leader here, is the bishop there, because we have one bishop for the whole country. He gets out of his office in the evening. He takes off his suit jacket. He hangs it in his mango tree. He picks up his hoe. And he goes and he cultivates tomatoes in the afternoon, every day. I've never seen an afternoon where the bishop isn't either taking care of his chickens or taking care of his vegetables. Unless there's a funeral, he's in the garden in the evening. So most pastors are farming to survive. The bishop gets a salary, but our pastors don't get a salary. And the collection plate in Zambia, if you're in a rural church in Zambia where the gospel is really needed, that offering might be $3 a week. That offering might be $2 a week. So without this, our BIC pastors would definitely starve. So that's just a little bit of context of the nature of Zambia and a little bit about the church. I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey. So we had a bit of a rocky start. So I've been working in Africa since 2006. But we've only been working with BICWM since 2018. We moved to Zambia in June, and we started working mainly in water. I'm a mechanical engineer. I have a lot of experience working with World Vision and other organizations doing well drilling and fixing pumps and things like that. And so we thought we're going to go to Zambia and we're going to do water work, which is a reasonable thing to do. But then things got rough. My wife had some medical issues. She has epilepsy. And we weren't able to control it in Zambia, so we had to come back to the States for some medical attention. And about 2 months after we got back, we thought we'd be in the States for 2 months. We were in the States for a year and a half because COVID happened, the flights got canceled, we got stuck, our visa, just thing after thing after thing was keeping us here. But God redeems time, so we weren't just sitting around saying, oh, we wish we would be in Zambia. I mean, we were sometimes wishing we were in Zambia. But so we started doing some other things. We started a research project with Messiah University on designing egg incubators that would be useful in Zambia. I learned how to raise some black soldier fly larvae, which are a kind of maggot that chickens love to eat. It's kind of gross raising them, but the chickens love them. And at the end of the day, we want chicken, so it was worth doing. And then finally, we returned to Zambia in July in 2021, and we really had a transition to agriculture. So we've been focusing on farming for the past 9 months or so. So I'm going to go on the next slide. The BIC Church in Zambia. So the first thing I want to talk about is our vision for the church. So the bishop sets the vision for the church, and so the vision for right now is a self-sustaining church that ministers holistically. So this is our vision. We want to be a church that can survive on its own, that doesn't need life support from the West or from other places. We want to be able to support our pastors. We want to be able to pay for our evangelism. And we want to be able to minister to people where they are. And where people are in Zambia is mostly in rural places. We don't have very many urban churches in the BIC church. There are urban places. If you go to Lusaka, we have skyscrapers. You know, we have there are cities in Africa. Some people don't know that, so I'm just putting that out there. Nairobi in Kenya is probably the coolest city in the world if you want to visit a cool city. But most of the BIC churches are in the rural places. So this is a picture of our choir at Nahomba. So these are some of my friends I go to church with. They're really good at singing. They're very exuberant. You can see them dancing there. And again, we said we're mostly rural churches, and we have a lot of land. The BIC church has over 8 square kilometers of land. So that's at like 4 square miles or something of land that we could cultivate. Some of it's at the Mashin Mission Hospital. We have a big farm at Gundu where we keep some livestock. The Nahomba Mission is a farm. The Sikalongo Mission, which is where we have our seminary, also has a farm. Because in the old days, the missionaries came to Africa and they farmed to survive and they preached the gospel, right? That used to be the way. So we have all this farming property, and the bishop would really like to see us use the property in a way that we can make money. Because, like I said, preaching the gospel in the poorest communities in the rural areas is never going to be sustainable financially. So we want to do low kingdom value, high profit activities like farming so that we can get money, so we can do high kingdom value, low profit activities like preaching the gospel in the rural places. So that's really, so if you see, like Tony's not a very spiritual guy, you know, he's an engineer and he talks about farming and like everything but the gospel. This is why. We're doing the dirty things. I play with dirt, soil, right? So that our BIC pastors can go do the preaching. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the projects that the bishop is working on to work towards sustainability. Let me stand where I can see this just a little bit better. So the first project that I'm mostly involved with a lot of the time is a chicken project. So we have about 70 chickens that were donated by the rural churches. And we've taken these chickens, we built a chicken coop for them, we've got some incubators for them. And so we're hatching these chickens so that we can sell the chicks at a reasonable price to people in the rural areas, and so that they can use that as an income generation, and also so that they can have meat. So that's one of our projects we're working on. We have a cattle feedlot, so every couple of years, the men's group in the church, they get together and they buy 20 cows, young cows, and then we raise them up and we try to sell them off for a profit. Some years that goes well, some years it doesn't, depends on the rains. We just started Zambia Christian University, which is right next door to my house. I don't really work on that project, but that's something the church is doing to try to make formal education in areas like accounting and nursing available to our church members. And then also the bishop, he's building a lodge, which is like a hotel, right across from the bishop's office. So we have general conference once a year in Zambia, and all the pastors come from everywhere. They come from the Copper Belt, which is like 14-hour drive to Choma. People come from Livingstone. People come from Western Province. We have all the pastors come in for general conference, and there's not always a place for everybody to stay. We end up putting mattresses on the floor in the churches, and so the bishop's trying to build this lodge so that when we have general conference, the pastors and the overseers have a place to stay. But also, during the rest of the year, we can be leasing those rooms out to people and making a little bit of profit that can help support the ministry as well. So those are some of the things that the bishop is working on. I talk about the bishop a lot. Bishop Nsemeni is my neighbor. He's my boss, and he's one of my best friends. So that's so if he comes up a lot, that's why. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work we were doing previously. So first thing I want to talk about is incubators. So in Choma, we have not enough egg incubators. If you're a farmer and you have eggs that you want to put in an incubator, there can be a week wait. So you need to plan ahead and get on the waiting list so that you can bring your eggs for that week that you finally made it for the local incubator business to get in. So we have a deficit of egg hatching capacity in Zambia. So I started working on some incubator projects. So when I was stuck in the U.S., we built this first one in the basement of the Dillsburg BIC parsonage. And And it was just, I call that a sketch of a machine. It didn't have a lot of insulation. It was just like, well, what are the moving parts and what are the controls we need? And so we built that during that time we were stuck in the US. And then when I came back, it turns out that the Bic Church had gotten some money for Tier Fund, and they bought some incubators that didn't work very well. We had a very bad hatch rate, 20%. And it didn't have any humidity controls. The temperature control was a little bit wonky. So I used some of my engineering skills, and we added a better control system with some humidity measurements. And then we also added some humidity generation in the incubator, and we got our hatch rate up to 60%. It should be at 80, but nutrition's another part of this puzzle. And then finally, because I'd given that incubator to the Messiah students, so I had a team of Messiah students working for 2 years in the United States, working on incubators, and we'd Zoom call at midnight every Monday night, my time, 5 in the afternoon their time, and go over the specs and go on how things are doing. We've been training these engineers, and so finally, just 2 weeks before we came back to the States, they came. And we built this from scratch out of stuff from Choma. So they brought the electronics, but all the metal, all these plastic baskets, all the sheet metal, all the insulation foam, everything came from Choma. So 90% of this machine can be made in our town, so which is a big success. We'll start testing it when I get back because we left on the same plane. I came back to America the same time they did. But that's been a real blessing to us to have that relationship with the university and to have such great students. And just a little story, we had one student, Shekinah, who comes from a single family home in an urban setting. And so she came to Zambia, and the first day I was like, can you hand me the vise? She's like, which one's the vise? And she's a biomedical engineer, by the way. She's not a mechanical. So she works with electrophoresis machines and things like that. She doesn't work with hand tools. I was like this. She's like, well, what's it do? I was like, it holds stuff. She says, Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't grow up with tools, so I don't know anything, but I want to learn everything. And by the end, she had welded 3/4 of that machine. So we had a really good time, and I think the students came with an appreciation for Zambia, and also I think they learned a lot about engineering as well. So that was a win-win for the BIC Church and for the American Church, I think. So another thing that's a large part of my job is fixing wells. The BIC Church over the years has drilled about 76 wells, and when they break, someone calls me. So some of my work is training people on how to repair their own wells, and some of my work is repairing wells for communities that don't have someone trained. And another part is just getting spares to people. So a lot of times people might live way out in the rural areas, like in Sinazeze or somewhere, and it might be like a 4-hour bus ride to the nearest town where they can get spare parts, right? So one of the things we're working on is positioning spares in communities where they can pay us for the spares when they use them, and then we'll replace that spare, so that community will always have some spares. And also the tools to fix an India Mark II hand pump cost about $200. So we just bought 3 sets of tools that we're about to position in 3 different communities, one in Macho, one near Sikalongo, and one in Western Province, so that when communities need to repair, so these tools, they cost $200, which is like a year's wages, and they sit around for 364 days out of the year, because you only need them once or twice a year. So if we can have a set of tools that goes from church to church when their well breaks, then we can share that cost, and we can use that machinery more effectively. So that's some of the things we're doing with water. These are some school students who are helping me repair their well. Turns out one of the students dropped a pen cap down. We opened up that valve. There was this guy right here, exactly, was in the valves. So we put it back together, and the students are there helping me. So whenever I go to a community to fix a well, it's a community activity. Everybody gets out, we all fix it together. And then this here is my friend Wesley, and you can't see the pump, it's behind these guys. But the pump at this is a Hamande on the way to Macha Mission Hospital. It's just near there. They had this well, it's 20 years old, so it was just shot. Like, it had just been used, as we say in Africa, too many Christmases. And so we got together. One of the community members actually donated the well, paid for the equipment, but no one knew how to repair it. So I came in with them, and we got the sledgehammers out, and we broke out the old cement, and we built this new pad here. So that's one of the kind of things that, on a regular day, I might do that, but it wasn't keeping me busy enough. So because I was really busy doing water work, but only maybe 1 day a month, 2 days a month, we said, well, what can we do with the rest of our time? We need to start doing some more with agriculture. These cows are plowing a field I have a guard who guards my house at night. This is his field. He hired some people to plow with oxen. So this is one of the ways that we do agriculture in Zambia. We have ox-drawn equipment. And so mainly I'd been working on figuring out what's the BIC Church already doing and how can I do a little bit to make those things run smoother. So like I said, so we have the chicken project. So I worked on the incubators. The chicken were having a nutrition problem. I started working on raising maggots and raising an aquatic plant that we can feed to the chickens that also help the hatch rate. They had a feedlot for cattle, but they were buying the feed, and when the maize price goes up, that's problematic, so I started growing cattle feed on the Humba Mission Farm. So I try not to take the goals of the church, because I want them to be successful and happy about what they plan to do in accomplishing their goals, but I try to find, is there a little piece where I can make that project go smoother? And here you can see a list of activities we were doing. So like I said, incubators, azolla. This is azolla. It's a water fern. It floats on the top of the water, and it doubles every 3 days. So every 3 days, I can take half of that, and I just feed it to the chickens. It's very high in protein, and it also helped improve our hatch rates. Black soldier flies. Napier grass is for feeding cattle. Vetiver grass is an erosion control substance, so you grow this grass in a hedge, and it stops your field from eroding. We do composting. I do a lot of composting, and I also do worm composting. This is Reverend Samboku. Reverend Samboku is one of my best friends. He's my neighbor. He's in charge of doing all the evangelism for the BIC Church. So if you want to plant a church in Zambia, you talk to Mr. Samboku, and he'll help you get the resources you need to do that. He also trains all the pastors in evangelism work, so that's his main job. And you can see here, he's very, very proud of his worm bin. So I have 2 worm bins in my kitchen where we compost all of our scraps. And every 3 months when I split my worm bin out, I take half the worms and I gift them to someone. And Mr. Samboku was the first person who got a worm bin. And his wife isn't so keen on the thing. But if you go visit Mr. Samboku, I guarantee he'll show you his worm bin. He's so proud of it. And it makes really good compost for our vegetables, which is why people love them. So, but there was kind of an elephant in the room. I've been ignoring the most important crop. You can see all those things there are things to support, but that's not really what we do in Africa, because what we do in Africa is we grow maize. So maize, for American English speakers, is white field corn. And this is our food. This is how we survive. This is the thing I eat 3 meals a day. I'm eating what's called Nishima. So we take the white field corn, we grind it into a fine white flour, then we boil that till it's a stiff porridge. It kind of looks like Play-Doh. You get kind of like a white Play-Doh. And you have that on your plate, and then you may have some chicken, and then you'll definitely have some rape leaf, which is kind of like turnip greens. So we have some turnip green type things. And you take a little handful of your Nishima, and you make a little ball, and then you dip it in the sauce or your chicken, and you get a little handful of Shima with some vegetables on it or some meat on it, and then you pop it in your mouth, and that's how we eat. And that's the main substance that we use to survive. It's like the potato. Like in America, I think you guys eat a lot of fried or mashed potatoes. In Africa, we eat Nishima, right? It's our rice, it's our bread, that's our main food. So, I mean, if you go to a Zambian and you hand him a sandwich, he'll eat it, but then he'll be like, "When are we gonna eat?" And we're like, "Well, we just had a sandwich." I'm like, "Well, where was the Shima?" There's no Shima, there's no meal. So in Zambian culture, the Shima is very important. And so the issue is our yields. So almost everybody is growing maize every year. That's how we make a living. That's how we survive. And if you ask me, how did Africa become poor? I'd tell you that's a really hard subject. That has to do with history, geography. You can go get a PhD in why did Africa become poor. But if you ask me, why is my community poor today? I'd say the number one reason is this. Our maize yield, on average, is 1.5 tons per hectare. A hectare is 100 meters squared, so that's a football field with its end zones. By a football field with its end zones, we're getting 1.5 tons per hectare. Now, American farmers might not know how many tons per hectare, because we don't use hectares here, we use acres. But Americans typically get 10 tons per hectare. So what's that? 5 times, more than 5 times more yield per hectare. And we're not doing this with a John Deere tractor. We're not doing this with, a combine harvester. We're doing it with this hoe. This is how we plant our maize. and we harvest it with a machete. So we're doing this all manually. So it's a lot of work to get that yield. And if you ask me why that is, it's a long list of issues. It's a lot of small things go into it. First, our rainfall's erratic. Sometimes you'll have your maize, it's looking nice, and then the maize comes into tassel, the maize starts flowering. That's the time where you need the water to produce the kernels. We don't get any rain that whole month. Sorry, I cry a lot, guys. We had a bad year 3 years ago, and 70% of the maize in southern province failed. So 70% of our food didn't happen. Now, people are counting on that food. I had mothers with babies strapped on their backs coming to my house every single day. Tony, you got any piecework? Do you need any gardening done? Can we cut your grass? Is there anything you can do? We need food. And I was like, I can't pay everybody in Zambia to survive. Like, that's not a one-man job. I started growing pumpkins, and I was just like, have a pumpkin. But it wasn't enough, and it wasn't good enough. And so we decided we need to get serious about maize farming. So as part of this wild journey, we ended up going to Malawi because we thought we weren't being able to go back to Zambia at one point when we were stuck in America. And we found out about this place called Crown Ministries. It's run by a South African man, Johan, who teaches people how to farm maize. And they have a 6-week program, and it's really, really good. And it's something called Foundations for Farming. It used to be called Farming God's Way. People may have heard of that. It was started by a South African farmer. He was a tobacco farmer, and he became a Christian, and he said, God, I'm not going to grow tobacco anymore. I need to grow food. And he went bankrupt because it's hard to grow food in Africa. And so finally, after he'd lost his farm and he was managing somebody else's farm, he went out in the bush, and he was sitting on a stump in the middle of the bush, and he's looking around the bush. He's like, God, why do these weeds look better than my farm? Like, why is the bush better than my garden? And God showed him. He said, God said, I don't plow anything. And look at my soil. There's a covering on my soil. We don't leave the soil barren to the sun to beat, because the sun's vicious in Africa compared to here. Like, it'll beat all the nutrients out of your soil. It'll dry up all the water out of that soil so fast that there won't be any bacteria, there won't be any fungus, there won't be any of our little helpers in the soil anymore after the sun beats on it. So he took these and he started developing this thing that we call Foundations for Farming. It used to be Farming God's Way, but we changed it to Foundations of Farming so we can go to Muslim villages and teach. Sometimes the name matters. And so we went to this place called Crown, and I took 2 of my friends, that first slide where we saw Catherine and Albert. So Catherine she grows some rice, and she lives in Mamba. Mamba is the toughest, driest part of Zambia. The fact that she can farm at all shows what kind of an amazing woman she is. Her and her husband Eugene are great farmers, but they could do better. And Albert is the bishop's young brother, and he's a seminary professor. And so we picked those 2 because she was in the hardest place, and Albert teaches our pastors how to preach, and he teaches them how to farm. So we took them to this training, and we had a great time. And there's some practices that we looked at. The first is no burning. So typically when an African wants to clear his field, he lights it on fire. And why? Well, because doing it with a hoe is hard, right? So it's a lot easier just to burn it off. But when you do that, you take all that carbon that was on top of your field and you put it up in the sky. But I don't have any roots in the sky. My roots are in the ground. We need that carbon in the ground so it can hold some moisture, right? Because those rotten plants is what will hold our moisture. Otherwise, you just get sand. So that's one thing that we did. The other is no plowing, minimum civil disturbance. We only hoe right where we're going to plant. We leave the rest of it alone so we keep our soil structure, so we get better infiltration so we can hold more of that water. These are all things I'm pretty sure American farmers deal with too. I'm pretty sure I'm not speaking to anything crazy here. Organic fertilizer. So one of the things Africans are most preoccupied with is how are they going to afford fertilizer this year. A bag of fertilizer costs about $50. It's going to go up. Oil prices are up. Ammonia is made out of natural gas, so fertilizer price is going to go up. A lot of people are anxious about being able to buy the fertilizer. So we teach people how to make it themselves. We can make our own fertilizer. We don't have to buy it. We can use chicken manure. We can mix that with our plants. We can make a compost, and we can actually make enough fertilizer to take care of our crops ourselves. Planting to high standards. A big problem we have in Africa is a lot of times the maize spacing is bad. So a lot of times we'll have big wide spacing, and that sunshine gets down in between the crops and the weeds just come right up. If you plant your crops with the right spacing, you can crowd out those weeds. If you plant it too tight, then your maize fights itself, right? Now they're competing. So maize planting spacing is important, so that's something else we work on. And then planting on time. So our window for planting is short. So the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere is always December 25th. Every single year, it doesn't change. Which means to get the maximum sunlight on your maize, you need to have it planted by November 15th. Prayerfully if there's rain. If there's no rain, you can't. But a lot of times what happens is I don't have money for fertilizer this year, so what am I going to do? Well, I'll go to my neighbor's house and I'll hoe his field for him a little bit, and he'll give me some money, and then I'll go buy some fertilizer, and now I'm 15 days late, right? Because I spent all that time trying to make some money so I could pay for my seeds, so I could pay for my fertilizer. Every single day you're late. 50 kgs per hectare. Every single day, you're losing a sack of maize per hectare if you're late. And so if you don't get planted till December, some people don't get planted till January, right? You don't have a prayer of getting a good harvest. Like it's just not even possible at that point. So, and then we studied some other things while we were there. We looked at some vegetable gardening techniques, mushroom growing, beekeeping, agroforestry. So we got a lot of tools in our toolbox. So we were in Malawi for 6 weeks. It was a great time. And we did it in partnership with BIC Malawi. So the bishop of the BIC Church in Malawi came with 5 of his pastors. 2 missionary families to Muslim communities came and took the course. Plus our African missionary to the Muslims in the BIC Church also came. I'm not going to mention anybody's names just because of some security things, but we had about 15 people from the BIC Church all at this training learning farming together, and it was a real blessing, I think, for all of us. So that was great. So let's talk a little bit about what do I actually do. So that's how we got here, but what do we actually do? So we have what we call the 4 principles, because we need to make a profit. I mean, our big issue is that Africans are farming at almost no profit or at a loss, right? And that's not really sustainable. We can't run a church that way. We can't run a community that way. So we talk about the parable of the talents, right? The rich man, he gave some money to 3 of his servants, and he expected them to go do something with it, right? God gave us all our fields. He gave us the ability to farm. We need to do something with it. We can't be hiding it under a rock. We actually need to make a profit. So what are our 4 principles of making a profit we talk about? The first is being on time. If you're going to use compost instead of fertilizer, you can't wait till the day before you want to plant to make your compost. It won't work. You need 8 weeks, right? So we got to make our compost on time. We got to make it early. We got to plant on time. If we miss that planting date, we lose profit, right? We can't sustain ourselves. High standards. So Africans usually aren't used to measuring a lot of things, so we had to come up with some measuring tools. And so I've got some of my tools here for accurate maize planting, and I'll just go over a little bit. So first we have the hoe. This is great. A lot of people when they use the ox plow, you have to wait until the guy who has the ox plow finishes before you can hire his ox plow. So you're losing some time. But everybody can afford this. This is a hoe. So I bring this so you can see how robust our hoes are. I think this is much better than an American hoe for what I do. I mean, if you're mixing cement, the other one's fine. But this is a robust tool that we use. And what we do is we dig holes. So you take your hoe and you make a hole that's 15 centimeters wide by 15 centimeters deep by 15 centimeters long. And that's great unless you don't own a tape measure. But it turns out that this Bic crystal pen, which you can buy everywhere on the planet, is exactly 15 centimeters long. So when you do the training, you give everybody a notebook and a pen, and then when they're learning, they can use that to say, oh, yeah, my thing's deep enough now, I did a good job. Now, and after you do like 20 holes, you don't need this anymore, but this is the training tool. Then the other thing is, you put your fertilizer in there, you take 2 handfuls of compost and put it in that hole, and then we cover that with a little bit of soil. And then you want to get the depth of your maize planting right, which is 5 centimeters. But what's 5 centimeters? Well, it just turns out that this elephant safety matches box, which you can get almost anywhere in Zambia, and everybody has, is exactly 5 centimeters on this side. It also turns out that it's 3 centimeters on this side, which is your spacing for your soybeans. And it's also 1 centimeter on this side, which is your depth for your soybeans. So this is a pretty handy little gauge here. And I got it for free. So then the other thing we do is we talk about planting ropes. This is my planting rope. This is some genuine made in China rope that I bought in Choma. So this is some rope you can get in any town in Africa. And what we do is we take what we call plastic papers, probably call it plastic sheet, and we just cut little ribbons out of it. And then we measure, because we want 60 centimeters between our planting stations. So we put a hole here, 60 centimeters, we put a hole. And so this is really easy to make. We just take this rope, we measure 60 centimeters, we give her a twist, we shove our piece of plastic in here, we wrap it around a couple times, we tie it. Now we have this nice rope that shows us our maize spacing, so we can get our accurate maize spacing. So to do this well, we need 44,444 plants per hectare exactly. We don't want one more, we don't want one less, right? What are American farmers these days on? We've got GPSs on our tractors, right? We have guided tractors to make sure that our spacing is perfect, because it's running off the wheel, it's got some gears so that it plants in the right spot. And we're even using tracks like GPS so that this row, the seam between this set of planters and this set of planters is the right width, right? So this is how we achieve that in Africa with low-tech methods, right? Anybody can afford this rope, so we can use that. So that's great. And then our row spacing. So row spacing is really important. We put permanent pegs at the top of our field that are made of steel so the termites don't eat them. So this is a piece of rebar, right? So that every year we're making sure our rows are in the same place. Because what we're going to do is we're going to swap. We're going to put soybeans this year and put maize next year. But what does soybeans do? Well, soybeans have nitrogen-fixing things in their roots. God's really smart. He's got this bacteria that lives in the roots of the soybeans. And if you don't put your rows in the right spot, so the roots were right here. If next year we plant our maize row offset and we plant the maize over here, it's not going to get the maximum benefit from that nitrogen from last year from the soybeans. So we have this permanent peg at the top that's where our first row goes. And then we have our planting sticks. These are 75 centimeters. Normally people use wooden sticks, but I'm kind of a dunce. What I do is I cut myself a wooden planting stick, and then I set it down right next to a natural stick, and I'm like, shoot. So I use PVC pipe, which I can also get it down, just so that I know, oh, these are my planting sticks, because these aren't just laying around in the bush. So we use that, so then we move our row down 75 centimeters, starting at that steel peg at the top of the field, we work our way down. So every year we know that our maize is going to be exactly the same place, our hole's going to be the exact same locations. We keep fertilizing that same spot, so we can improve that soil in that one spot. So most Africans, when they buy a farm the first year, it does really great. And then over time, it gets worse and worse and worse. This method of farming, you buy a piece of land and it gets better and better and better. Because we're building our soil instead of mining our soil. So that's the big difference between the methods we're teaching and the methods that the British taught in the 1940s that are being used at the moment, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with the British method. If you're in Great Britain, I'm sure it works, but we might notice it rains in Ireland like every day, and that just isn't true in Zambia. So the British methods from colonialism they aren't helping us out. Oh, and finally with joy. No wastage, so compost everything. If you have any surplus from your farm, put it back into your farm. And then with joy, right? Do everything with joy as if unto the Lord, right? If I go up and be like, it's bad. I gotta go farm today. I gotta go weed the garden. Are you gonna do a good job? Is God gonna bless your field if you have an attitude like that? No, he's not, probably not. And you're not gonna be able to do a good job either. So do everything with joy. So I tell people, God has a vision for a hope and a future for you, right? Your farm isn't drudgery. Your farm is a blessing, and you can use it to bless others. So that's what we're trying to do. So the actual techniques that we do compost making. So we make a high-quality compost. So our compost is big. It's 2 meters, which is about my wingspan, by 2 meters by 2 meters. So our compost pile is literally this tall. It uses 20 bags of chicken manure. Bag is maybe this high, it's like a maize sack. And then we use a lot of local plants. So I spend a lot of time out with my sickle, cutting grass. So we use green grass. We use a combination of green and dry grasses to make that. And that does what we call base dressing. So when we go to plant, we put that compost in right before planting. But the other thing that we need is a top dressing. So top